right, Ben, if you would for me, tell me a little bit about, briefly, how you came to be at Peninsula Rehab Center.
Well, I had a massive stroke at home. I reside in Orange City, Florida. After suffering the initial stroke, I was transported by EMS to Fish Memorial Hospital in Orange City, and then airlifted by helicopter from Fish Memorial to Orlando South in Orlando, Florida, and then brought to here, Peninsula Rehab, to do inpatient physical therapy here. Because at Orlando South, apparently they didn't have anything there for me.
Now, when you came here to Peninsula Rehab Center, tell me what it was like those first few days that you got here.
The first few days was very weird because it felt like I was in a fog, or more precisely like in a dream state. I told most of the doctors and the therapists here that I felt like a caterpillar in a cocoon and wakening up. So it was kind of like being born again.
You talked to me a little bit ago about how it felt like being in a pool.
Yeah, you feel like your head is underwater, and there are people standing poolside, and you can hear them talking, and the voices sound kind of far away and echoey.
And you had also said that you could hear people asking you the questions, and something about you knew what you wanted to say but was having trouble saying it.
It was like it was a process. It took a little while to hear what was being spoken to you, process your response. I'm very meticulous. I try to articulate myself so that I'm very well understood. So I actually wanted to take my time, think about what I wanted to say before I said it, so that it would be understood. And not slur my words or anything like that, because
you talked to me a little bit before. Tell me again about the types of problems that you were being treated for here in PRC, about your balance.
there was a progressive stage to just acclimate me to just sitting up in bed, sitting at the edge of the bed and just maintain and hold my balance without falling over. That takes some concentration.
Mm-hmm.
And even little things like that takes a lot out of you. It just wipes you out.
Tell me about what was the best day or maybe the best breakthrough that you had in therapy while you were here?
The best breakthrough I had was getting off of the peg feeding tube and working with Charlie Brown, and he got me to progress from eating pureed foods to eating solid food. So that was a great breakthrough for me.
What was your first meal, your solid food meal?
It was a slow, gradual process. We discovered that I could swallow because the biggest challenge was just being able to swallow. I had such weakness in my throat that little simple things like just swallowing, even things like just swallowing my saliva, I had, and not just holding saliva in my mouth. I had a big challenge with just being able just to swallow that because the muscles in my throat were not strong enough just to perform that little function, that little task of just swallowing.
Talk to me a little bit about the support you had in going through everything. You talked to me a little bit about your faith as well as your family.
Yes, once again, my biggest asset was just believing in my faith. I'm a Christian. I'm a born-again Christian. I believe wholeheartedly in God's Word, the Bible. and believing what the scriptures say in the Bible, that I'm more than a conqueror through Christ who loved me, and I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me. So this is something that I had deposited in me prior to the stroke. So when you deposit something in, what you sow, you're going to reap. So because the seed of God's word was already planted in me, in the soil of my heart, coming up against this test and this challenge of suffering a stroke, you have a great testimony. These testings and trials only come to test you. My biggest testimony is the stroke knocked me down, but it didn't knock me out. I'm down, but I'm not out. I'm a fighter, so I can fight back. And just in talking with some of the other stroke patients that I have met here in the hospital and watching some of the struggles that they go through, for most of them, just sitting in the dining room and eating was like a big chore. It seemed to wipe them out. And I thank God every day that I'm at the stage where I'm at now. I can eat regular food. I'm at home, and I can eat regular food. It was a progressive stage even in drinking. When I first started out in regards to swallowing, I started out on what's called honey thickened liquids, which is everything is thickened with of a consistency of thick honey.
Mm-hmm.
Because from my working with Charlie Brown, the understanding is that the muscles in my throat, there's like a little flap that covers your windpipe, and that muscle wasn't strengthened yet, so that if you drink thin liquids, it will go down and drip down into your lungs, and you have a propensity for maybe getting pneumonia. So you have to be very cautious of that when you're working with a stroke victim and getting progressive back to doing the things they were able to do prior to the stroke, such as eating and drinking. You can't just dive right into it. You have to do things in gradual steps. And I thank God for people like Charlie Brown that work with me and just doing little things like stimulus, electrical stimulus on my throat to strengthen the throat muscles so that I could swallow.
Talk to me a little bit about how your family's support helped you get through this.
That was a major part. That's what, along with the doctors and the therapists, was having my wife and my children come to the hospital to visit me, praying with me in the evenings just before visiting hours were over. It strengthened my spiritual and emotional morale. It gave me that drive and incentive to want to get better and to want to leave the hospital and go home.
If you had a family member or a friend or a neighbor who needed physical therapy, would you recommend them to come here?
Most definitely.
How come?
This place is awesome. It's like, if you just think about this analogy, that in this country we have an awesome military. And if you just look at any branch of the military, of the armed forces, and you see just some of the training that they go through, the very best of who we have in the armed services, the elite, they go through very rigorous training to be able to do the things that they do in defending this country. And here at Peninsula Rehab, it seems physically challenging, but you have to have a very strong spirit, which comes to mind that old adage about the spirit has to be willing in order for the body to be able to achieve anything that's great. You have to have a very strong spirit. We've always heard in the past doctors would say in regards to a patient that might have been on the brink or the verge of death. The doctor would speak to the patient's family and ask this question: do they have a fighting spirit? If they do, then they have a good chance of recovery. And even with something like this coming back from a stroke, you have to have a very strong, you have to have a fighting spirit. You have to have a attitude, a spiritual attitude of never say die, never say I can't. You have to keep forging forward, and you have to keep saying I can, I can, I can. Almost like the little engine that could. I know I can. You have to push yourself, because the therapist, with all of the skill and knowledge that they have, they can't do it for you. You have to do it for yourself. All they do, like I told some of the therapists, you guys are like, let's say for instance, if you wanted to take up a skill such as carpentry, they put the tools in your hand and lay out the blueprint and show you how to build the house. They give you all the tools that you need to build the house. Your body is the temple, the house that you have to rebuild. But they give you all of the tools. But your inner desire has to be your motivation to take the tools that is given to you and put it to good use. And they give you really good tools. It's not like, you know, they give you a shoe and some nails and tell you, here, build a house. They give you very good tools. They give you the best of the best tools. And even here at the hospital, you get I've had a lot of great support from the therapists, a lot of the nurses, the patient care techs have been very helpful, very supportive, very encouraging. I've met a lot that have the same faith as myself, and they've encouraged me in that respect. I've even had nurses that share the same faith and that would hold my hand and pray with me, speak with me and encourage me, and that was very, very encouraging and very uplifting, because they welcome you and embrace you like family. For those that don't have family that actually comes in from the outside to see you, you still feel that love. A lot of people don't understand that love is very powerful. And it is true that love conquers all. It does.
All right, thank you so much.
Do something on physical recovery that he used. When you first got here, what was your physical state like, and what is it now? How have you progressed through your physical therapy?
When I first got here, my biggest challenge, like I said once again in the beginning, was just being able to sit up and hold my balance on the edge of the bed. That was very challenging. I could sit up, but I couldn't hold it without falling over. I would fall over like a little baby, just flop over. That's why I use the analogy like being born again. It is, you're like being born again. You have to learn everything all over again. Learn how to, like a child learns to sit up, hold their balance, to crawl before they can walk. So I'm learning to take baby steps.
Are you up you're up walking now?
I can walk a little with minimum assist, which means we have a specially rigged walker that my left hand would be placed on, and I walk with that. It's not a real pretty picture, but it's progress because I'm able to move.
So you've taken your first steps since the stroke?
Yes, I have.
Anything else? No. All right, thank you so much.